Hey there. Today I want to talk about what it means to have and to hold your power, your personal power at work, the power that you deserve as an individual, as a contributor, really regardless of your official title or your position. I'm Marjorie Siegler. I'm the creator of the Prescription series, the Speaking Prescription, the Social Prescription, the Branding Prescription, all career development tools intended mostly for physicians, but anyone, of course, is welcome. And I hope that this will help you. So this is a Q&A. You guys know I do these periodically, and this Q&A was just too good. I know I did one just 2 days ago, but I'm back for another because it was just too good to wait. And so whether you're watching the video or listening on audio, I hope you enjoy it. First, I'm going to read the question. So Sherry writes, "Hi Marjorie, I've been watching your Instagram feed. I've seen quotes from your conference retreat last year. So I signed up for a webinar. This is a little bit long, and I've gotten a few blogs and emails from you, and you speak a lot about how we all have more power than we think." Yes, I do. "What do you mean when you say hold your power beyond the quotes and pep talks about knowing your worth?" I think that might be because on my recent Instagram feed, I had posted something that said, "Know your worth," and then add tax. Obviously, that's not a quote I made up. You've probably heard it before, but it is really important. But of course, what's more important is how to implement this know your worth business. So I'm going to give you 4 ways to understand how to establish power, personal power at work, and how to hold on to it. Because that's one of the biggest mistakes that many of us make is, we have power and then we give it away bit by bit, usually unintentionally. So I've written a couple things lately, and I'm going to make references to those as we go so that this is short and concise and you can follow up with other references as we go. Okay, number 1, establish expert power. So expert or informational power is really, really important, and it's what makes you irreplaceable. It makes you not just a cog in the wheel because you have true expertise. You have a deep subject matter knowledge. I'm not going to dwell on this because it's exactly what it sounds like, but really, once you study something, you become proficient in it, you become expert in it, you practice it, you speak about it, you write about it, and soon you've developed a reputation for expertise around it. And once you have that, then you are definitely no longer interchangeable. And if you were to move on, you'd be in high demand. So this really is a game changer for you at work. And it makes it so that you have a little bit more leverage than if you did not have that informational or expert power that you have. And that just literally comes from knowing something and being good at your job. So I'm not going to go more deeply into that, except for to say that in order to have this be effective, your information or your expertise has to solve a problem. Either it solves a problem for patients, it solves a problem for your boss, it solves a problem for the department. So your expertise has to solve a problem, and you have to have that reputational aspect. So some of that comes down to professional branding, which I've spoken about many, many times. So just scroll on through the videos in the blog feed, and you will find plenty of resources to talk to you about professional branding, or the branding prescription. Okay, so expert power, that's that. Number 2, boundaries. I wrote a whole thing recently on Twitter about this, sort of a long form. So, and a blog post. So the thing about boundaries is everybody says you should set boundaries, and then very few people tell you how to do that. So especially if you're not brand new somewhere and you're going to sort of suddenly change the way in which you interact with people. So as a simple example, if you're not going to be reachable after some hour of the day, you're going to stop answering calls, you're going to stop looking at emails, and you're literally not going to look at it again until tomorrow. That's a boundary that a lot of people say protects their evening time. It's a super idea to have. I do recommend it. It's great. But how do you implement that? How do you suddenly go about doing that? Are you supposed to make a big announcement? Hey guys, I'm not going to be checking my email anymore. Or do you just sort of start behaving that way and hope people catch on? And then what about the actions that you take that basically erode that? Because now that you've set that boundary, you happen to be working one night, right? You've told people to not reach you. You've essentially said, I'm not working at all, but you should work whenever you feel like it. So let's say it hits you and you feel like getting some stuff done, and it's 7 o'clock at night or it's midnight and you're up and you can't sleep. If you answer an email at that time without using some of those software that will send it at a delayed time, then you have eroded, like it's many more steps back than it was forward. You eroded that power. You've basically given it away, where you set a boundary and then you basically said, I don't take my own boundaries seriously because I'm breaking them. So why should you take them seriously either? So I would say it's really important to establish boundaries and to keep them, uneroded by your own behavior. We self-sabotage so much. So I'll post a little link to the blog post where I go into this in more detail, but boundaries are really important. Understanding how to effectively implement them and stick to them is really important, and don't undo them by your own self-sabotage. That's a big mistake. Many of us are guilty of doing that. So you got to establish those boundaries. And by the way, I recommend that you find something small to go ahead and practice with. Choose something. It doesn't need to be something that's really a dramatic change, but choose something that you can sort of stick to and say, this is what time I'm available to start, or this is what time I do things in the evening, or I don't do two things at once. So if I'm doing this, I don't answer that. Something that's kind of little, and just start doing it. Because even if you don't have a boundary at the moment that you care strongly about, you should practice implementing and defending one. It's really, really worth those dividends when you do have one that does matter to you. Then you'll know how to do it, and people will know to take you seriously. So again, I'll link to that because there's more on that. Don't break them. All right. Number 3, I wrote about this today, and because I was really inspired by it, and also because I saw it a lot in my workplace today, and I heard it come out of my own mouth. Stop apologizing. Stop saying you're sorry for stuff you're not sorry about. It's the wrong word almost all the time. If you have intentionally hurt somebody, sure. Or unintentionally, I suppose. If you've hurt somebody, yes, apologize. If you've made a mistake that had some bad consequences, sure, apologize. But if you and somebody else just started to speak at the same time in a meeting, do not apologize. There's a different word for that, right? That's not anything you need to apologize for. Or if you have an idea, or you want to put your hand up, or you have a disagreement and you don't think the same way. And I have a whole list that I wrote, and let me see if I can even find my thread. I have a question. People are constantly like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have a question. It's probably a dumb question. And I wrote today on Twitter, don't be sorry you have a question. It means you're curious, brave, and you care enough to want to get it right. And of course, it also means you want to learn. And so that is not stupid ever. And I went on for about 5 more little slides to say, don't be sorry you have an opinion. Don't be sorry that you're putting yourself first. Don't be sorry that you are proud of yourself. All kinds of things to not be sorry. You hear people say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, but I just need to share this one great piece of news. Don't be sorry. You have some awesome news. Say it. So stop saying you're sorry, because you're giving away little bits of power every time you do that. And you'll notice too that when people are sort of coming at each other in the hallway, or when people are speaking at the same time in a meeting, or you need to get somewhere and someone else is in the way, when there's sort of a no-fault situation, usually both people are not saying sorry. Usually it's just one. And that one person who's saying sorry is handing little bits, tiny bits, almost unimportant bits of their power away, except for that if you do it all the time and it becomes a habit, then you have established a pattern in which you do not have power. So just resist the urge to do that. Find other words, or say nothing at all, and take notice of how it really changes the dynamic in your interactions, because it really, really will. Okay, number 4. Oh, wait, no, let me go back to number 3, because this is something that happens to us at work a lot. So depending on whether you manage people or you work as a team with somebody, I know a lot of times, someone has a deadline, they don't get the deliverable done, and so you need to ask them for follow-up. So you're asking the second time, right? You're asking for an update. And people will often say, oh, I'm sorry, can you tell me what the status of this? If someone has promised a deliverable to you, or they report to you, or otherwise as a team member, they are accountable to have a deliverable, you don't need to be sorry for wanting to know the status. So don't start your sentence that way, because immediately it puts sort of an imbalance of power, again, regardless of whether or not there's actually a title or authority discrepancy. Okay, and then number 4 is master silence. Learn when to be quiet. This one is really, really important. It's especially important, I think, in negotiations. I'm going to come back to that in a second. We do talk about negotiation and effectiveness like that at the Transformed Retreat, which she was asking about, Sherry, the Q&A. But first of all, people don't need to know every single thought that you have. So if you're frustrated about something and it's important, you of course should verbalize it. I don't want you to not share your opinions, but you don't want to be a constant stream of consciousness for everybody to know every single thought that you have. Basically, you're pulling the curtain back, and that also gives away a little bit of power. But knowing how to master silence helps you to have power when you choose to speak. So if you're not always just saying anything that comes to mind, and you're not always just sort of filling the air with things that aren't important, when you do speak, You will have more power in what you speak about or whatever it is that you say, because people will be unaccustomed. I mean, they won't be necessarily unaccustomed, but they will know that when you open your mouth, you have a valuable contribution, that it's thoughtful, that it's important, and that they ought to tune in and listen. Getting back to negotiation, I'll mention, this is an area also in which you should absolutely have silence. And one of the other things you should learn to do. So among others, I mean, there's probably, we have a full curriculum, and there's probably anywhere that you Google something on the order of at least 7 to 10 important strategies around negotiation. But one of the things is, a negotiation is not the same thing as asking for something, right? You are not asking permission. In a way, you are asking to be granted, right? Either more money, more time, more benefits, more whatever it is. So in some degree, yes, you're asking for something, but what you are not asking for is permission. And that's just my opinion. I'm here to tell you, I don't think you ought to be asking for permission. You are a grown-up and you can make your own decisions, right? So you can decide where to put your efforts. You can decide where to put your time. You can make decisions about the kind of work that you're doing, or about the intended output and whether or not it's good enough, or when it's done. Not everything needs permission or like a rubber stamp from somebody that is ahead of you. So if you are above you in sort of the hierarchy. So when you are having conversations with people who are, technically speaking above you, I strongly recommend that you do not ask permission. You can ask for input. Just watch your language. Ask for input, ask for advice, ask for recommendations, ask what they would do. But don't ask them for permission to do what you want to do, because that, again, just hands over a platter of power, like you are unable to make your own decisions, or that if you did make your own decisions, you wouldn't be capable of having sort of the agency of carrying them out on your own. So don't do that. Negotiation is lumped in there and sort of really are all conversations, but don't ask permission. Ask for input, ask for advice, right? Ask for guidance, ask for all kinds of things, but don't ask for permission, and learn when to be quiet. So also in a negotiation, once you've stated what it is that you want the outcome to be, and you have made whatever case it is that is needed to support that desired outcome, just stop talking. Most people are so uncomfortable with silence that you will make much more, advance towards your goal if you just state it and then stop talking. This is true, by the way, for public speaking as well. You've seen this happen all the time. People will stand on the stage, they'll ask a question that they hope the audience will answer back to, and they wait like a millisecond before they move on, because the speaker on stage is so uncomfortable with that silence. But if you can get comfortable standing up there for 5 seconds, it will feel like an eternity, but the impact will be huge, and the conversation that will come after that will be enormous. So I guess we're kind of bouncing all over the place depending on what you want your job to be, right? Whether you're in industry, whether you're in academics, whether you're a speaker, etc. But these things apply really across the board to just about everything. So as a quick recap for anyone who is tuning in here in the middle, or if you zoned out on me in the middle, keeping your power at work or establishing your power. Number one, informational. And that leads to expertise and reputational power. Nobody wants to get rid of the most, well-known expert in a certain area. It gives you leverage. And that reputation has to be for an area of expertise for which you are solving a problem, either for patients, society, research, your boss, your department, or whatever it is. Those are the main things, and that gets wrapped up in professional branding. So again, see my professional branding resources. Number two, boundaries. Make sure you set some, and make sure that you implement them in a way that is going to be clear, and then make sure you stick to them, because what most people do to undo their sort of boundaries really, really quickly is they violate them themselves. And nothing says don't take me seriously and don't worry about my boundaries more than not worrying about your own boundaries and not sticking to them. And there's a lot of ways you can avoid this. As I mentioned, there are software, there's other techniques that you can do so that you can work whenever you feel like working, but other people shouldn't have an expectation of being able to reach you during those non-working hours, right? That's just one example. Okay, boundaries. Then number three, stop saying sorry, unless you've like stomped on someone's foot accidentally. Again, I've written a whole bunch of this on Twitter today because I got really fired up about it, but almost all the time when you say, oh, sorry, and then whatever comes out of your mouth, sorry is not the right word. You usually aren't sorry. And every time you say sorry, you're giving away tiny, tiny bits of power. And then number four, master silence. Learn to master silence in any conversation. Learn to master it in a negotiation. And remember, when you're negotiating, you are not asking for permission. because you're a grown up, you have your own power, you're going to hold it, and you're going to proceed as if you do. And everybody is going to treat you as if you do, because guess what? You do these things and you will have established your power, and you'll continue to hold it no matter your title, no matter your formal position.